Fresh off of our trip down to Huber's, you were there. Zach was there as well, with all of the for our first time talking to Mike Woodson in a bit, and our last for a while. Same with Kurt Signetti, but we've been talking this morning about the fact that Mike Woodson, in my opinion, Mike Woodson is going to have a ton of different options this year that he just didn't have last year, and maybe his biggest challenge is finding which of those options are best or run the best, and how he's going to kind of marry that with his philosophy. And I'm like, wow, I could sit here for an hour and just talk about potential combinations of how you could run this. You've got Mackenzie Abaco, who's expected to come back, picking up right where he left off and going forward. You got the addition of Oumar Ballo, but Renew, we gonna see more of that buddy ball type thing? But I think Indiana's got to get a little faster paced. They've got guards that can do that, but how are you going to mix in all of these guys? It's a lot of minutes to spread around too.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's number one. You're right. It is a lot of minutes to spread around. I think the flip side is, I think it's maybe not the worst thing if we get to the end of the season and Indiana doesn't have anybody in the Big Ten in the top five in minutes played. We've seen Indiana with that in the last couple of years. The way obviously Indiana had to count on Trace Jackson Davis, and that's one thing. Listen, Jackson Davis was one of the best big men the Big Ten seen in the last 10 years. You want him on the floor. He can be on the floor. He can be effective on the floor. But even last year, you think about the minutes numbers that Trey Galloway and Kalel Ware were logging by the end of the season, 34, 35, 37 minutes a game. That will wear you out. And I'm not suggesting, that Trey Galloway's injury was a product of wear and tear, but it's more just kind of the idea that, broadly speaking, you'll keep everybody healthier, you'll keep everybody fresher and fitter if you can move those minutes around a little bit more. And some nights, and that's not necessarily that the minutes averages will be the same every night, but more that, some nights you will need to, you will want to go a little bigger because, in Oumar Ballo, I don't know if people appreciate yet the extent to which, like, I understand Indiana's had really good bigs since Mike Woodson came in. They've not had one like this. Ballo's game is mostly 6 feet and in at both ends of the floor. He's good in the pick and roll situations. We'll see if Indiana can maybe, get him a little bit more flexible or versatile defensively. But the flip side is, you're talking about a player that is as good as any in the country, maybe better than any in the country in terms of the whole package, 6 feet and in at both rims. And I'm talking about offensively and defensively. We talk so much about floor spacing. Mike Woodson mentioned this the other night. Oumar Ballo can space the floor in a different way because he's so good at it. If you look at his Arizona film, getting down the floor quickly, getting low post position, sealing a defender before all five players are even down there and set up and whatever they're trying to do defensively. And suddenly, right off the bat, you're presented with essentially a, kind of a devil's bargain of, do you double the 7 foot, 260-pound big man who's an elite rim finisher because he's buried your post player, 3 feet from the rim in bad position. He's probably going to have to foul him. Or do you leave him alone and hope that he can defend without fouling? Because Indiana's not going to have necessarily, I don't think anyway. I mean, I don't think they're going to be, bombs away, but I don't think Indiana's going to have the problems from behind the 3-point line this year that it did last season, as long as everybody's relatively healthy. And my point in this is you're going to have some games where Indiana's going to want to run more too big stuff. That's just going to happen. You're also going to have some games where either because of circumstances like foul trouble or because of matchups, Indiana will want to go smaller. And Mike Woodson talked about that, Wednesday as well, that with Luke Goody, with Mackenzie Mbaka, with Bryson Tucker, you can flip some lineups that maybe put multiple wings on the floor, obviously along with multiple guards, playmaking guards. That's the other piece of this too. Miles Rice's bona fides as a pick and roll playmaker, are pretty well established. We saw what Trey Galloway was able to do in the latter part of last, comfortable with the ball in his hands running Mike Woodson's offense. Kanan Carlisle, wound up kind of having to be a do-everything player for Stanford last season. I don't know if Indiana puts quite that much on him this winter, but the point is he can do it. And that's not even mentioning a Gabe Cupps or a Ja'Kai Newton, or the times where you might want to put the ball in someone like McKenzie Mbako's hands to initiate the offense in a mismatch situation. You're right. It's going to be incumbent upon Mike Woodson to make sure that all these pieces get fitted into the right spots. But I think what he talks about, what you take away from when you listen to him is he feels like he's got options. I've had people say to me since Huber on Wednesday night, and everybody saw the quotes and the tweets and the stories. It seems like Woodson's finally figured out that you need good guards to win. And I said, if you listen to the things he was saying last season, I think he knew he needed good guards to win. I just don't think he had them at the moment, largely because Xavier Johnson was hurt. Gabe Cupps was Indiana was probably having to put more on his plate than he was quite ready for, which is perfectly fine. He's a freshman. Most freshmen aren't Jalen Hood-Schifino. Most freshmen need a little time and can't be that player that plays 31 minutes a night and gives you 31 high-quality minutes as a point guard in particular. But I think Woodson looks around now and he's talking about these questions from a position of strength instead of weakness. And I do think it makes, the immediate future look very promising for Indiana.
Yeah, he's got depth at virtually every position, and there some of the depth we don't know about how good it's going to be. Ja'Kai Newton is an X factor. What is he ready to step in with an intricate role in this team? I don't know because we haven't seen him play. You've got a freshman in Bryson Tucker. How game ready will he be as a freshman coming in? You've got Luke Goody out there. So there's so many new faces on that periphery that can change things. That, again, I go back to the word options, but they should be able to withstand virtually every situation from a different team, like you said, whether they have to go big, go smaller, depending upon the opposing lineup, or do you impose your will instead and make those teams try to match you?
And the thing is, you can do both. Even in the course of one game, I think I've used the Purdue comparison a lot. It's not apples to apples personnel wise, but Purdue got really good last season at, sort of knowing when to flip to smaller lineups. And then the counterpoint is knowing when to flip back to bigger ones and knowing when maybe it had the opportunity to say, now we're going to go a little bigger. We're going to go a little bit more Zach Edey, Trey Kaufman-Renn, but we're going to do it for a certain reason, whether it's defensively or it's because maybe, they had an opponent down 9, 10, 11 points. They were chasing the game. And so it's now, okay, well, you're the one who's got to make up ground on the scoreboard. We're going to put this, ultra efficient sort of two big offense in that can still hit some threes, but is also going to get a lot of high quality, high volume twos. That's going to make it harder for you to try and put a dent in this score line for the next 5 minutes, because we all know this. Basketball coaches tend to think about games just in media timeout segments. And just sort of like how do we win this timeout segment, and then we'll reassess, and how do we win this timeout segment, and then we'll reassess, and that's kind of coaching 101. No matter what sport you don't have some. In basketball, as an example, you don't have some 40-minute plan that you believe you're never going to deviate from. So it gives Woodson options, and it's always interesting to me. This isn't the first time I've heard Mike Woodson say this. I think that he places a lot of importance on these summer months. I think in his own mind, it's. And I don't know if this is maybe again part of his NBA background or just his approach as a coach. But I think in his own mind, I know it's limited workout time, but I think he sees these summer months as basically the months when it's sort of like, all right, I'm not, I think he thinks about it in terms of saying, like, I'm going to come with some ideas, and a rough sketch in my mind of what this team ought to look like, but I'm not really going to start filling in the details and really, shading in the colors and fine tuning things until I get them all together. And then I think he sees the summer as the time when he really can mold a lot of stuff into, the key pieces that he feels like he's going to need. I think that's when he makes a lot of early decisions about, this is what we're going to lean on early in the season. These players we're going to try and develop so that maybe January, February time they're playing their best basketball. We're gonna protect him because he's a freshman and he needs some work, but we're really gonna kind of dive into him and see what we can get from him kind of day one, that kind of thing. And I think his approach is almost kind of like, and that will allow Indiana to sort of fine tune itself when you get to September and October, and maybe you are just drilling more down into actual season prep. And obviously, Indiana's not going to be fully healthy. It sounds like if Trey Galloway does get cleared for full contact at any point this summer, it'll be late in the summer, and that's an important development because, as I said, we saw how good Galloway was for Indiana last year. He's a senior. He's a captain. He was, far and away Indiana's best playmaker last season. Now he's going to have a lot of help this year. I don't think Indiana's going to have to ask as much of him. But the flip side is that means he can try and impact the game in other ways, and you're just going to be better for having Trey Galloway on the floor if you're Indiana. But the balance of this team is going to be on the floor, working out together. If it hasn't already started, my guess is it probably really gets going in earnest next week. I think these are months that Mike Woodson places a real premium on.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and thank you for enjoying our content and videos. And make sure you hit that subscribe and notifications toggle so you don't miss out on anything, whether it's Indiana Hoosiers, the Boilers, the Colts, the Pacers, Indiana high school action, whatever is happening in sports. We're trying to bring it all to you, and make sure you don't miss out on a thing. Again, hit the subscribe button for us. Helps us out a ton. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much.